started, you know, regardless of who else comes. But it's a beginning class, and so the beginning information is the same, for this class, beginning digital photography and for beginning black and white photography, at least at De Anza College. I can't speak for other colleges. Um, so, did you have any troubles or experiences of some sort with the first assignment? Anything
Um,
you want to talk about?
so the way, sure. So the way I personally approached this assignment was in the first photography class that I took, the instructor had quoted something along the lines of, "You shouldn't have to go further than your own bedroom to make an interesting picture."
Uh-huh.
So I actually decided to do this assignment in my bedroom.
Oh, cool. All right. Excellent. Well, let me share the screen.
So kind of
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
to just to like challenge myself to try and see my like everyday, very familiar,
Right.
mundane things in like a new way.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. That's great. I mean, there are so many things to photograph that we may not ever think of as being photo worthy, So that's great. I'm glad you challenged yourself. I'm going to share the screen and then we'll take a look at your work. Let me get this a little larger. So what are we seeing here?
So this is I'm actually outside of my bedroom, looking, shooting down the hallway into the
Mm-hmm.
bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And here, on the screen or whatever compressed file, like the glow of the brown color isn't reading as strongly, but basically I was focusing on the color that was being cast as
Mm-hmm.
the sun was coming through like brown wooden blinds, where it's coming through on the blinds, it's then being reflected sort of on the wooden floor, and then actually on like, I think it's the white of the
Uh-huh.
door. So that's
Right.
really what I was focusing on there.
Cool. Yeah, so I can see that the color is there and attractive. It's a somewhat difficult lighting situation because you're shooting into bright light and or brighter than the surrounding area, and the camera can't expose correctly for more than one area in terms of the amount of light. So if it decides to expose correctly for the bright area, which it kind of did, then the darker areas surrounding become even darker. Um, if the camera or you decide to expose correctly for the shadows, which are dark, then you have to let more light in, and then the highlights, the bright areas, will be even brighter. So it looks as if this
Mm-hmm.
this worked out pretty well in terms of getting the tones maybe somewhat better in the bright area, which is where you were seeing the color, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so again, a difficult lighting situation, which you dealt with pretty well. It's a long exposure, 1 second, and that's hard to do. It's hard to keep the camera still for that long. It starts to record the movement of your own body, which you can see here. Um, you could
Mm-hmm.
use an even higher ISO rating, so you use 400, which is what one generally would start at inside. So you could try for 1600 or 3200, though those ratings have their drawbacks as well. You know, you start to get a lot of noise, a lot of uh, grain, what looks like grain. Um, but that might be one thing you could do, or use a tripod, or just stabilize the camera in some way. You know, it doesn't have to be a tripod. Okay, but nicely done. I like the frame within a frame, you know, coming
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
room. Yeah, that works nicely. Okay. So what are we seeing here?
Right. So this is the curve, and I um, I liked how there's curves happening in sort of different, in multiple ways, in terms of you're getting some like really gentle curves of the light on the headboard,
Mm-hmm.
and the headboard itself is curved. Curve, the pattern, you're right. There's just kind of like curves happening all over, and I actually, this image is a reflection of all of that. I have um, a painting, a
Mm-hmm.
framed piece of artwork in the bedroom that if you see in the lower bottom corner very faintly, you can see sort of a circle, and up
Mm-hmm.
in the top left there's a circle. So those are some of the circles that I was able to
Oh, interesting.
still capture, from the painting itself, while getting the reflection of
Mm-hmm.
the bedroom that I want. So, um, I didn't use like any kind of like polarizer or anything on my lens to really control the reflection. And we
Right.
can't process anything, so this is straight out of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
uh, but yeah, actually, so I was trying to capture curves in this one scene, sort of, I guess, through layers and as many sort of ways as I could,
Right.
albeit maybe they're subtle curves, but wanting them all to kind of be there.
Great. Yeah, it certainly works for curves, and it's an interesting image. I mean, the effects are interesting. It has the feel almost of a double exposure of the sort one would get when using film, and either purposely or usually in error, shooting two frames or two images on the same piece of film, because it does look as if there really are two different things going on with the circles
Mhm.
from the painting, which kind of read, if you don't know that it's a reflection in painting, they read a little bit like sun flare. You know, the circles you get when you get
Mm.
a lot of sun
Mhm.
coming in to the lens. And so it kind of diffuses the image, or the the bed and what's going on there. So it creates an interesting effect, definitely. Um, and the hard straight lines of the shadows work nicely against the softer curves in the frame. So the only thing I would say is, because the highlights are so bright, the foreground kind of fell into shadow. Um, and and so the colors
Mhm.
are a little bit washed out, and you know it's looking a little dim there,
Mhm.
and yet
Mhm.
I mean it still works, you know, and it's not that one has to have bright intense colors. um, so yeah, yeah, nicely done. Okay, tell us about this image.
Um, so this is basically like the intersection of the wall and the ceiling. I think I was either sitting down or laying down on the floor or the bed or something, when it was still fairly like early in the morning and the sun is just coming through
Mhm.
the windows and sort of capturing the pattern light that gets cast on
Right.
the wall and the ceiling. Um,
So you're lying down, and so it's kind of upside down? Is that what we're seeing? So the area at the bottom of
I'm
the
trying to
frame.
remember. I don't think this. I think that now that I think about it, I think I may be sitting on the floor. I'm not lying down,
Okay.
but like the top portion is actually the ceiling, and then so it's like ceiling and wall. So kind of that diagonal line that cuts just barely across
Mhm.
there is
Mhm.
the intersection between ceiling and wall.
Right. Okay. Yeah, interesting effect. Um, again, because your exposure time was longer, the focus is not quite, it's not sharp, which is not a
Mhm.
bad thing. I'm just commenting on it. It gives it a sort of dreamy,
Yes, it was.
otherworldly effect. I'm sorry, what was that?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
it was intentional.
I see. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, and it works very nicely.
Yeah, I wanted that kind of, because I was also thinking about like the experience of like laying in bed or starting, right? And these are the things that I see on like a regular basis, right?
Right.
And so I kind of wanted it to have that like bleary-eyed, you know,
Right.
waking dream feel. And so yeah, I did go for a more sort of blurred, not
Hmm.
so crisp. I intentionally didn't want it to be crisp.
Correct. And it works very nicely for pattern, definitely, um, and is a very successful image in and of itself. Um, I think it works nicely with the subdued colors as well. Um,
Mhm.
I think it makes us, the viewers, pay more attention to the patterns and the intersecting lines and so on. Color images, whatever else they're about, are about color, you know? And so it's obviously not a black and white image, but the muted colors, I think, allow us to pay more attention to other elements going on in the frame really nicely. Okay. And finally, shadow. Come on. Anything to say about this?
Um, I mean, I just I liked going heavy on the shadow aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the way that the shadow kind of creates a frame
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
for the image in a way. Um, and um, yeah, that that was really what I particularly liked about this image. It still has like the other components of like some patterns and some, color down in the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
but I really like um I personally like kind of slightly underexposed images or darker images and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And so the way this holds some feelings of maybe like almost tension
Mm-hmm.
with the dark shadows sort of holding this
Yeah.
this the bed.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it works really beautifully. Your choice to emphasize the shadow area, not only in terms of the framing, but in terms of the exposure, making it darker, and having the foreground not disappear, but fall into shadow so that it doesn't dominate the frame and pull our eyes. away from the shadow area, but you still have a sense of tension, as you said, between the areas or among the areas that I think works really nicely. Um, I like that you can see just a bit of the color. I just want to show what it looks like
Mhm.
lighter. Um, and that, I mean, that if you make it lighter, the image becomes much more about the foreground and the colors in the foreground.
Mhm.
Um, and of course,
Mhm.
you know, we make choices. We all make choices when we photograph, and I think that your choice works really well, especially in the context of an image about shadow. You know, um, that it was important that you exposed correctly for the shadows. You know, structurally, I think it works really
Mhm.
nicely with the the diagonal lines coming in, um, offset by the very hard or definite, I suppose, horizontal line at the bottom of the light area. So, yeah, beautiful job. And great job on all of them. I will not save what I did. Yeah, very nicely done on all of the images. I look forward to seeing your next assignment, right? Uh, and what is that? Depth of field, I guess. So, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Any questions, comments, anything that you? I'll stop the share here.
Um, Questions. Um, I do have a question, like a technical question.
Absolutely.
So, um, I have the time right now because of my employment situation. So I've been working on trying to get a head start on some of these assignments and
Uh
go
huh.
through
Oh,
some of
good
the
for you.
materials.
Uh huh.
And so so that assignment you just looked at, and I did submit the depth of field
Hmm.
already. So because we can't process our images, I decided to shoot in fine when I would typically shoot in raw, but I'm like, well, I can't
Okay.
process that, so I'll just shoot in fine. But I'm thinking to actually do the remainder of the uh, assignments actually in raw, and I'm
Hmm.
just kind of curious, like, what happens if I shoot in raw? Like, how is that going to impact? I'm just curious, like, how does that impact the look? Because, like, again, like, you're looking at fine, not processed, compressed into zip, whatever, versus shooting in raw. Still can't process them for these assignments, but I might for myself. And then how does that impact the look?
Um, Often, actually, when you look at them side by side, the JPEG, if especially if it's a fine JPEG, might look a little better. Um,
That's what I did.
the exposure is often kind of corrected for more than in raw. Um, so your choice as to how you want to submit them. Uh, it doesn't much matter to me personally, although of course JPEGs are smaller files, so they load more quickly. Um,
Yeah.
but for you, you might want to, if your camera does this, shoot in, and you have the room, I should say, in both RAW and JPEG. And then you can submit the JPEG files. And then if you want to do some quick and dirty stuff with them, you can do it on JPEGs. But you have the RAW files, which of course have all the information. So if you want to work on them and have um, larger and higher quality images, files, you'll have them.
Okay.
But that's up to you. Of course, it takes more space, on both on the memory cards and on whatever hard drive you're using. Um, so that is often an issue for people. But but if you can, that's what I would recommend.
Gotcha.
Then just submit the JPEGs unless you have some reason to submit the raw files. But as I said, for myself, it doesn't really matter.
Sure,
Okay, so your
sure.
choice.
And then I was also curious, just, because it's an option on my camera, when I'm shooting in the JPEG, is to set it to monochrome. And I don't know if that's like, so for the portraits, for example, I think black and whites are beautiful, for people. And, maybe in a future assignment, um, I would like really like to do black and white, but
Hmm.
I can't process to black and white. But if I set to monochrome, is that okay, or do you want us to just stay in color?
It's a good question. I'm glad you bring it up, even though we're not at that point yet.
Okay.
So I would say you should shoot it in color.
Okay.
And it's okay to convert it to black and white after the fact. Make a copy or use the JPEG and convert it on the copy, so that you always have the original. You have all of that information, um, and then you can do what you want with it, including converting to black and white. But if you shoot it in black and white, then you've already discarded all of the color information, uh,
True.
which you can't bring back.
So it would be because just because the instructions said like don't process, don't crop, don't do anything to your images. So I just wanted to
Right.
know if like black and white was an
Mhm.
option for us.
It is, and you know what? Thank you for bringing it up, and I'll put a note about that on the self-portrait assignment. Okay, yeah. Um, so especially
Cool.
after the technical assignments, that's depth of field and motion, where I really don't want, I just want to see them as they were shot. Uh, but after that, if you want to crop a little bit and certainly convert to black and white, that's fine. Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? Any other issues,
Don't think so.
questions? No? Okay, great. Well,
Mm-mm.
I'm glad you came. um, and I'm glad we
Yeah.
got to talk about your images. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, it's you know no, typically I would not be available because of work, but right now I have some
Got
time,
you.
so
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's
glad
one
I
of
could
the,
get some feedback.
yeah, I'm glad to. Really, I really like to talk with people about their images because just writing a few comments on Canvas doesn't, it's not the same, obviously, as doing it in person. So, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
glad we could do that. Um, and hope to in the future, obviously. But yeah, one of the very few good things about the pandemic is that since many people are home, they can do things like take a class, that might otherwise be impossible because they're at work or and don't have the ability to get fit to physically get to a class. So
Yeah.
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 Okay, well, thanks.
And so with
Hmm.
the, I was just asking, just having one more thought about like, so I know from for my learning, when I've taken other classes, it's been really helpful to watch uh, watch and learn from other people's reviews, like seeing
Right.
what they did and the feedback that they
Hmm.
got. Is there some mechanism to do that
Well, yes.
here? Um,
Sorry.
mhm. Oh yeah, go ahead.
So, for each assignment, you get assigned two people whose work you're to look at and to comment on. Um,
Right.
right. And in addition to that, not really. That's what this was for, this extra Zoom meeting, and I'll have one for each assignment, but I obviously realize that anytime I schedule it will not be good for everyone. Now, apparently,
Of
this
course.
time was not good for anyone except for yourself, or for whatever reason, people decided not to attend.
Yeah.
Um, but that's what this is for, is so that we can look at work together, and make comments about it.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that that looking at other people's work when they're not here, not that it's a bad thing, but I don't know if people would feel
Hmm.
cheated or
No, I,
what.
yeah.
What's that?
Right, right.
Um,
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. I don't think that's weird to speak about somebody's art when they're not able to like
right. Yeah, to
speak
talk
about it.
about it,
Oh
defend
well,
it
I would,
maybe, but yeah, so I
exactly, because
will.
I did do the peer.
You did do it already?
Yeah, no,
Oh, cool.
yeah, I did do the peer reviews, and it's almost it would be kind of interesting since I saw theirs. I don't know if there was a way that I could hear what your take on it was if I was
Right.
seeing things similarly or
Yeah.
different
A
or
forum.
whatever.
I Let me see what I can find out. I mean, we could have a discussion group and people could submit to that as well. Maybe we could try that. Um, it gets to be, some people will feel that that's too much, that doing the peer reviews and doing that. So, but I can
Yeah,
make it optional. So yeah, I'll look into that. Yeah, because
yeah,
that's
I'm
one thing
curious.
that we're really
I would
missing.
love.
Right.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah, not having that interaction, it really, you lose a lot in the class, definitely. Um, so
yeah.
yeah.
Well, well, thanks for this.
Okay, absolutely. And any other questions, let me know. And of course, I have
Yeah.
office hours once a week. Okay. All right. Thank you, Samara. It said Samara. Is that correct?
Thanks.
Yep.
Samara.
Samara. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. You take care.
All right.
Bye. Have a nice
You too.
weekend.
Bye. You too.